are experiencing a time of transformation. How can we begin to rewrite our story? I'm Chelsea, and this is the Amara Ritual Podcast. Join me as we journey together through our inner landscape and begin to create outer change. Welcome. And welcome to 2024. Woo! Wow. It feels like just yesterday it was 2020. And in the past 4 years, it feels like we have lived lifetimes. Individually and collectively, lifetimes. And 2024 feels big. 2024 and beyond feels big. It feels like this huge shift, this split is happening. And yes, of course, we've been feeling and experiencing and navigating these shifts for quite some time, but this feels different. Like I'm seeing an image of this giant heavy metal door and just boom, closing. And it's symbolic of there's no going back. There's only going forward from here. And it's not even that we're writing a new chapter. We are being asked to write an entirely different story. And so what is this shift? This shift, the way I like to see it, is an evolution. We are moving through a major evolution in consciousness. Some may refer to this as ascension. I like to see it as a remembrance of our truest selves as individuals, as community, as the collective. And while these concepts and philosophies and experiences, yes, they sound very ethereal. How do we take these very ethereal concepts and ground them into our current reality? Because I don't know about you all, we are shifting and navigating a lot. So many of us. And so the way that I like to see this, or I guess an analogy, is like a computer. And just as computers or AI is constantly evolving and expanding and further understanding itself, we too are doing the same. Our consciousness is ever evolving and expanding and understanding ourselves. And yes, these evolutions have been going on for forever, right? But what feels so impactful about this specific evolution is that it's happening at a very rapid rate, and it's happening very profoundly. And it's like we are beginning to bridge the gap from where we were and where we're going. And we're bridging that gap within the present moment. And so this shift is really stepping into our next iteration of embodying truly who we are. And it sounds so beautiful, and it is so beautiful and it's so expansive. And at the same time, we got to leave our bags at the door, right? Because where we're headed, they can't come with us per se. And this isn't an overnight process. It's very cyclical and it's an unraveling, but it's an integral part of the process. And everything, I'm seeing this image of a rug. I use this reference a lot, but this rug is essentially being lifted and it's being shaken, and everything that was underneath this rug is coming up to the surface to be seen. And a good example of this, for New Year's Eve this year, I went to a friend's house and she lives next to this Space Needle. And every year they have this like really extravagant firework and drone show. So we're like 10 blocks away, right up the hill. The view is amazing. And we're watching the fireworks go off while simultaneously we can hear down below at the Space Needle this giant protest going on. And people are marching and protesting and yelling. Meanwhile, this light show of fireworks and drones is going on and like representing this like illusion of this dying old world. And these protesters representing like this dichotomy of what's actually going on. So as we move through this evolution, what's really happening, right? It's an evolution in our awareness. So where many of us may have operated from a certain awareness of here, we are now operating from a higher awareness up here. And we begin to see all that we could not see before. We're starting to peel back these layers in that awareness. Just like when we remodel a home, in order to recreate, in order to create the new, we have to demo. We have to literally pull away everything in order to build the new. And so that is one of the first steps in the process, is this delayering, this deconditioning process. And these layers could be our subconscious, society or culture or families. These layers could be patterns, maybe our traumas that's not only our own experiences, but trauma that has been passed down, like epigenetics, through our bodies, right? Through our ancestry. These layers could be our beliefs. And so as we move through this evolution, we are essentially not only seeing these layers, but we're starting to remove them. We're literally starting to peel back layer by layer. And as we begin to do that, what is underneath is being revealed. And that is our true nature. That is our soul, I believe. That is the source where we all come from. It's this blank slate of who we truly are at the end of the day. And it's not to say that all of those layers were bad, right? It's just to say that those layers essentially clouded us. They clouded us from so much of who we truly are. Like, wow, I see how I've been repeating the same patterns in my relationships all of these years. Wow, I see how I've been playing it small and not stepping into my truth or what I really want to create or following my dreams because these fears have been holding me back. And these fears are rooted in hearing from my family all these years to play it safe. And this is huge. This is huge. Because once we become more aware, once we become more of an observer, that's when we can see these patterns and choose different. We can start to choose different, and that's really how we begin to create massive change. And that's why if we want to experience outer change, we have to first change that which is within us. This is true not only on a personal level, but also on a collective scale. And so the more people that start to do that inner work, that start to move through this ascension process, we're going to see massive, massive, massive shifts. We're embodying more of our soul. And when we embody more of our soul, we are being called back into our heart. And so how could we not begin to shift and change when we are navigating life from this completely different place? And as we begin to be in our hearts, embody more of our higher self in our physical body, we begin to literally operate in these higher frequencies, in these higher dimensions and higher realms. It's very energetic. And as we begin to do that, we no longer resonate with the same things that we did before. It is pure energy. And so many of us, as we start to peel back these layers, it's like this unveiling. It's like, whoa. And this like releasing while becoming at the exact same time. And that's why if it's not soul fulfilling, truly, it's not going to work anymore. It's going to feel like I'm seeing an image of someone putting a triangular piece into a round hole. It's going to be excruciatingly harder and harder and harder to stay in those places, in those environments, to be doing those things, to be navigating life in those certain ways. Because our soul is taking the lead. Our heart is taking the lead and wanting to take the lead. And that right there in itself, that like I believe is one of the like most expansive experiences that a human can experience in their life. And we are essentially relearning how to walk and talk. I know that myself, I went through a major, major, major process of like years of releasing and becoming, and it's still happening. I don't know, will it ever end? I don't know. Maybe it's part of this human journey. And I think that there are varying degrees, right? When we go through those huge awakenings, maybe we're really in it and it starts to kind of like, how do you say, level out again? But there are moments that I don't know if any of us are essentially immune to it per se, but it's really big. And I think that when we have more of an understanding of what's happening, it allows us to move through this process and this evolution with greater capacity. When I first started moving through my own journey of remembering who I am, I went through a series of really like major dark nights of the soul and initiations, and it felt like I was dying. Literally, it felt like I was dying because I was dying and literally becoming who I truly am, remembering who I truly am. You know, most of my life I operated from this place of who I thought I should be, what I thought was expected of me. I was operating from my trauma. I had really low like self-worth, and that dictated so much of my actions in life. And I was creating from this place. I was seeking everything outside of me to fill a void within. That's how I was navigating life. And that's how so many people are navigating life, hoping that this external validation will give them what they're looking for, will literally fill that void inside. And while on paper, yes, at certain points, I had this like amazing job at one of the top architecture firms in literally the country, possibly world. I had so much going for me in terms of like my relationships, my finances, all of these things. And every part of me was saying, this isn't it. This isn't it. My soul began speaking to me. It began speaking to me, first in whispers, but the soul whispers began to get louder. And the way that my soul was speaking to me was through my body, was through anxiety, was through burnout, was through those gut feelings of, this doesn't feel right. Is it really supposed to be this way? Right? And I remember I was experiencing debilitating pain, physical pain and anxiety. I was having panic attacks. I remember going to doctors and therapists, and they were wanting to treat the symptoms, but not necessarily the cause. And I remember feeling like, this isn't my path. Like, what's really going on? Like, really, why? Why am I feeling this way? And it was then that I began working with healers. It was kind of like through this dark night of the soul, through this experience, I was just like, literally like, anything else but what I'm experiencing, please. And I remember I walked into this one woman's, she was a healer. She was an energy healer. And she looked at me and she looked me up and down and she was like, girl, whew. She's like, your soul doesn't have enough space in your physical body. Oh, whew, I even feel it now. And I remember even that moment when she said those words, it was like my whole life flashed before my eyes. And I saw everything so clearly, right? And after that day, every day I went home and I was like, that's it. That's it. I'm going to connect with my soul every single day. I don't know how. I don't know what this looks like, but I'm going to do it. And from there, it was like, it changed the trajectory of my entire life. And I look back on those dark nights and I'm like so grateful for them, because without them, I wouldn't be where I am today. Truly, I don't believe. But what now was on the other side of all of that is massive. And it's true. Like, I still move through my own experiences, my own cyclical nature, my own initiations or evolutions, but I now have this greater awareness of what's going on. And through this process, I now feel so embodied in my heart, so embodied in my soul. And I'm beginning to see truly and understand that our inner world is the basis of our outer world. And once we start operating from these places, we really do start creating in these really magnificent ways. That these frequencies, these higher frequencies and dimensions that we can operate from, we also can create from. So here we are, many of us, having these major revelations, having these huge expansions from the inside out, and these massive awakenings, or as I like to say, remember, and collectively, humanity is going through a major, major, major remembrance at this time. And honoring wherever you are in this process, because this process is very cyclical and we can't skip steps. I mean, we can't build a house without the foundation. You can't put up drywall without the framing. You can't put in the cabinets without the drywall. I mean, you can't get from A to Z with skipping all in between. So, yeah, honoring exactly where you are. And so, yes, like the first step is that awareness, right? Our expanded awareness. And from there, we can start to peel back all the layers and all the conditioning that's been placed upon us or placed upon ourselves. And from there, essentially, we are in this like very fertile place. What's left? What's left? So that's where our soul wants to come in and take the lead. But even the act of getting to know our soul, even the act of then creating that space to allow our soul to come in, right? And start to create that relationship and that dance. And once we have this more embodied connection of our soul, once our soul has enough room in our physical body, then I see it as this like void. We're in the void. We're like, all right, now I can create. Now I can create from this place. And it's what a powerful place to be in, but what a vulnerable place to be in, right? Because you might be creating what may not have ever been created in this capacity or this way. You might be creating in ways that others around you may not understand, that even your logical mind may not understand. Oh. Yeah. So much can come up, so much resistance, so much fears. Maybe these old beliefs keep resurfacing, right? And just having this understanding that it's okay. Like we are relearning how to walk and talk and having grace with ourselves. You know, I think something that's really dangerous is this concept of the dangling carrot of when I arrive, I will be happy. When I feel this way, when I do that thing, when I ascend. And I think, that's again instilling like validation that we are truly moving away from, because we will have many awakenings in our lives. We will have many deaths and rebirths. And it's not about getting to that thing. Yes, it's important to have dreams and goals and aspirations. Yes. But it's also about how do we embody all of us in this moment? And how do we ride these waves of life from this place of empowerment and understanding and our heart? I met with a woman last week and she was explaining how so much in her life is coming up and that she feels like she is moving through like a deep, deep grief, and she's not able to do the same things or be with the same people or in the same environments as she once was before. And it's really tricky being in this in between. And it's true, there is an essence of being in this in between that we're all moving through. But how do we cultivate in this present moment what we want to be? And not only what we want to be in like this dangling carrot aspect, but an acceptance for where we are. Like, how do we cultivate pure acceptance for where we are? And just see all of it as information and guidance in leading us to this next iteration, right? And I know when we're in it, we're in it. We are in it. oof, let me tell you, like, oof, I am walking it right beside you. I mean, even just the other night, I was in my own deep grief, literally purging. But I know that what's on the other side is so much expansion. Our body and our emotions have their own intelligence that sometimes even our logical mind takes a second to catch up with, right? So just trusting the process and trusting that if you're what you're feeling to honor that. And yeah, really, 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 really having this like deep reverence and trust and devotion to the process. And so while we are moving through so much healing or these like transitions and maybe seeing a lot in the world that's coming up to the surface to be seen, can be very traumatic, can be very difficult. At the same time, we can't forget to tap into our joy, to tap into our heart, to tap into our rest and our peace for ourselves, for our communities, for the collective, because that is what is needed so much at this time. And not to bypass what's going on, but how do we have a healthy balance of both? Right? How do we have a healthy balance of both? Because we are not in a race, we are in a marathon. We are in a marathon. So sustainably, it's important to think of how can I move through this transition, this shift, sustainably. And we're not meant to do it alone. I hear that so often and feel it and experience it. We are not meant to do this alone. So I think that's all that wants to come through for today. And yeah, in terms of this podcast, I definitely am excited for 2024. I feel like last year I had like all these goals to like show up in this way, and my ego had all these plans, and then my soul had a different route, right? I was on a very inward journey last year, and now I'm really feeling the call to like, all right, take everything I've learned and like, let's step out and share. And I really want to share more in this podcast. I have interviews with others that I've been recording that I'm really excited to share. And I also have a mentorship offering coming up that I will birth in the next month or so. So if you are wanting some extra assistance or mentorship on your journey through this process, through your remembrance, please don't hesitate to reach out. And yeah, this year feels big. This year feels big. Loving you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, see you next time.